My name is Paula Carey. I'm Chief Justice of the Trial Court in Massachusetts, and thank you for coming to our virtual town hall in Worcester. We're grateful that you have come here today with us so that we can share some of the services and opportunities you have to interact with our court system. Our main reason, this is the third virtual town hall that we have done across the Commonwealth. We expect to do more as we move forward. And the main objective is that it's come to our attention that many in the community are not as familiar with the services of the court. And then when you add the pandemic to the situation, there has been some confusion in the community about whether the courts are open, and if we are open, what kinds of opportunities folks have to come to the court for help with any of the matters that they need help with us. So we hope to inform folks about how to access our court service center, our court interpreters, and to illustrate to folks how we can help you and your families really access our court system. We are in the business of providing justice to those in the community. We look at ourselves as community courts. We believe that our presence in the community is important and that many of the reasons why people come to us are often very significant, life-changing events. It could be issues such as eviction, drug and alcohol issues, parenting and visitation issues, domestic violence, and so many more. You're going to hear today from a variety of experts who are going to talk to you about what they do within our court system and how they can help you, and how we in the court system can really perhaps take the mystery out of some of the situations that you find yourselves in. We'll also talk a little bit about what the eviction moratorium means and what that might mean to you. This town hall will be translated, I believe, in 5 different languages. And we're hoping that it will be available remotely so that even if you're able to view it in real time, that in fact, other community members, you might be able to review it at a later date so you can refer them to some of the information and to the video that will be posted on our website, or actually I think it's with YouTube. I can't keep track of it. We have made ourselves a whole different court system with this pandemic, and we've had to get used to all different kinds of new technology. But I think we've done a pretty good job of doing that. Maybe more than most in our system would like, but we've had to make do. So with that, I'm going to let the show begin. But before I do that, I would like to introduce the city manager for Worcester. We're grateful for his presence. City manager is Edward Augustus Jr. He was appointed as the city manager of Worcester in January of 2014. He's focused on continuing Worcester's economic development and its renaissance. He supported education and supports education in youth and making city government inclusive for all residents of New England's second largest city. So City Manager Augustus, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Chief, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you all and all of the folks who are going to tune into this. And you know, this really is an important part of what Dr. Hirsch, who I'm going to introduce in a few minutes, and I, as well as Mayor Petty, have tried to do since the outbreak of this pandemic, which is to keep people informed, to give people accurate information that is fact-based, that is driven by science, that's driven by data, and to do it as accessibly as possible. And the fact that the trial court are doing these town hall meetings, that they're interpreting them in multiple languages, really is a great service that reinforces the work that Dr. Hirsch and I are doing here locally, as well as the governor and his team are doing at the state level. And as we record this, we see the benefit of using data and science, in fact, to drive our decision-making process. Massachusetts is in a place that I think is enviable when we look around the country and see states that have not taken that course, that have been driven by what they want to see happen, as opposed to making the difficult decisions even in the moment, but have long-term beneficial consequences. But we can't sit back and rest on our laurels. The gains that we have made over these last 4 months are easily lost if we take our foot off the gas here in terms of wearing the masks, keeping the social distancing, informing ourselves of the latest goings on. This pandemic and what we know about the virus is constantly changing. And it really is incumbent upon all of us in leadership positions, as well as everyday citizens, to stay informed from accurate sources of information as to what's going on, what's the latest guidance, what's the latest information that you need and that your family needs to make good, well-informed decisions. So the city of Worcester has tried to play that role. We look to partner with whether it be the trial courts or our colleges and universities, our business community, our hospital systems, to make sure that we're all sharing information and keeping each other informed of what the latest guidance is, the latest best practices are. We have tried to follow the state guidance. The governor's laid out a reopening plan, and Worcester's tried to be dovetailed with the state on all of that guidance. We have occasionally been willing to go a few steps further than the state has when we thought our local data and our local situation dictated that. For example, I put in a mask ban, a mask requirement rather, in the city of Worcester 3 weeks before the state did, because we were seeing the numbers, we were seeing the data, and we were seeing the evidence that wearing masks was going to have a good impact on limiting the spread of the virus, especially in settings, whether it be stores, restaurants, other common gathering points. The state has put that in place. I think it would be helpful if there was a national mask requirement in place, but that's for someone else to decide. But we have our responsibility here to make those good decisions. And that's one thing all of us can continue to do. Adhere to that mask ban personally and encourage folks that we come in contact with to wear those masks whenever you're in common spaces, to follow that social distancing protocols. We declared a state of emergency here in the city of Worcester that remains in place on March 15th, the Ides of March. And as somebody with the last name of Augustus, I'm particularly sensitive to the Ides of March. But we have taken every step possible, and we will continue to make sure that we keep our community safe. As of today, we're in a very good place, but all you need to do is look to Florida and Texas and see that that can be lost. Literally in a couple of bad weekends, a couple of weekends where we let our guard down, we can lose those gains and have to go through all of the pain and the suffering that comes with shutting things down again, the economic consequences, as well as just the ability to conduct our daily lives. So we're going to remain vigilant as a city. We're going to continue to work with all of our partners, even as this reopening continues along and colleges start to come back and other things get back to normal. We're going to really stay vigilant, making sure that we do everything we can to keep all of our folks here safe, and also to deal with the consequences and the fallout. There's a lot of fallout. Economic fallout, businesses that are not going to be able to reopen because they just financially can't move forward. Cultural institutions that are closing down because they can't have big theater performances and other things that have a residual economic impact in our community, as well as foreclosures and evictions and all of the other consequences which really bring people to our court system, and you know, the ways that we can partner together to try to mitigate some of that fallout. So with that, I want to introduce my partner over these last many months, who's guided us with science and best practices, and who's really been a calming presence, I think, to the community, reassuring us each step of the way. The city's medical director, Dr. Michael Hirsch. Dr. Hirsch?
Thanks very much, Mr. Manager, and thanks, Chief Justice Carey, and all of you for allowing me to be in this august assembly. I always feel like you guys are such the best representation of what's wonderful about our American system is our legal system. And I know that just like our medical system has been under assault from the COVID virus, I think you guys have been facing some assaults too. So thank you for persevering and providing justice for the community. Yeah, I got very, very lucky, and I got to work in the administration under City Manager Augustus and Mayor Petty. And long about March 12th, City Manager Augustus decided that we were going to do these daily updates about what was happening. So we would try to kind of keep the calm, present the right data, present the right attitude, and try to stay positive. And I think, fortunately, between the medical community, which just did an unbelievable job at actual care for these patients, and the pre-hospital community, which I would include the two federally funded community health centers, the Edward M. Kennedy Center and the Family Health Center, as well as our Worcester Emergency Medical Services, did an unbelievable job at the actual care of patients with COVID. And then the community itself just responding to the mayor and the city manager and myself, imploring them to wear masks and to make sure that they did hand washing and sanitation of surfaces and do the physical distancing more than social distancing. We were really trying to emphasize that connectivity during these really tough times is very important. So we were actually trying to provide for our young students in the Worcester Public Schools and for the elderly that were not able to go back to the senior center, buddies, medical student buddies, college student buddies that would read them stories, keep them abreast of the news, check in on their health needs. The social distancing piece, I don't like that terminology. I think we did a very good job at trying to keep physical distancing without the social isolation as badly as other communities may have felt it. That being said, this virus has been an unbelievable challenge. In its first wave, when we first got our first patient March 11th, so now we are exactly through with 19 weeks of this pandemic, just entering now the 20th week. This first group of patients, we didn't have nearly the experience to know how to manage their ventilation if they needed to go on a ventilator, how best to manage their fluids, how best to provide them with the supportive care they needed, because they had very strange abnormalities in how they clotted their blood and reacted to certain antibiotics and steroids. And gradually, Worcester was a cutting-edge place that was able to help develop some of the very common interventions now that you hear. This drug called remdesivir. We were one of the leading edge places that helped to apply it to COVID positive patients, and found that it really did help ICU level COVID patients have a much smoother course. We were one of the first places to do convalescent serum therapy in people that had survived COVID, donating their serum to patients that were really suffering from terrible cases of it. And it turned miraculously several cases totally 180 degrees different direction, and really reduced our fatality rate considerably. So, we've had about 5,300 cases in Worcester itself. I think all things considered, being a community of, close to 200,000, that's been a very, very low rate. And a lot of that is because of how all aspects of the city, government, medical community, our first responders, all pulled together and kept us safe. Where we don't know exactly how things are going to fly is in this next 3-month period. The three big challenges are the return of public school, the return of higher education, and the onset of flu season. Those three things together could be a perfect storm that would potentially mask a second wave initially and lead us into a situation where the overwhelming of the system that we avoided first time around, we could potentially have that happen. But why I don't believe it's going to happen is that we have these additional tools in the toolbox now that help us to know when to administer certain drugs in the event that we do see a case. We are much more able to stop it before it progresses too badly. And we also have a much better system of contact tracing. That's really, I think, the hallmark right now of how our defensive mechanism is going to be. When we identify a COVID positive person in one of the testing centers, we rapidly disperse a contact tracing team that will identify where they've been in the community, get to those people, and get them to start a quarantine protocol, identify contacts that they've had. So we've been able to avoid a lot of big outbreaks. We had one at Walmart. We had a smaller one at Table Talk Pies. We had, unfortunately, the biggest problem was the long-term care facilities. We didn't have quite the understanding that when the elderly, particularly if they're confined in one of those facilities, gets exposed to this virus, that it is like tinder to a match. It goes up. And many of the facilities, by the time they turned around after realizing they had one case, they had several clusters of deaths. So we mitigated a lot of the problems because the city manager jumped on an opportunity to build a field hospital at the DCU Center. And we were quite expert at getting that up and running with the help of the National Guard. We used that center for COVID positive people so that it didn't clog up the medical system with patients that were convalescing. We also used it for COVID positive homeless folk that wouldn't be able to shelter in the normal situation because of the close quarters of most of these shelters. We also ran 4 other shelters that the city manager helped to set up with Dr. Maddie Castile, who's our Commissioner of Public Health and Human Services. And a wonderful job was done to kind of keep that population safe. And I think the third part of this was taking over the Beaumont long-term care facility over on Plantation Street, which served as a convalescent place for the elderly stricken with COVID positivity, who ordinarily would not have been able to go back to their nursing homes. And you probably followed a little bit that in New York City, when they tried to put COVID positive elderly folk back to their old nursing homes, those nursing homes had huge waves of deaths. So we avoided that by having the Salmon Corporation give us that Beaumont facility. So I don't want to take up too much time. I know everyone here is going to be regaled, I think, with court people coming back, telling them tales of COVID, telling them reasons why they can't wear a mask or are wearing a mask, or whether they're going to be able to, sit through a trial because of the lingering effects of COVID. These are all real things. We're finding out now that people that have had quote unquote mild cases of COVID or serious cases of COVID have a lingering after effect that has made it difficult for them to concentrate, has changed some of their vital functions, cardiac, renal, lung functions long term, that make it hard for them to speak for long periods of time. I was trying to think of what in particular would affect somebody's ability to appear in court at a hearing or at a trial that would take a long time. These are things that are, I think, quite real and have to be respected. I think that the inability to wear a mask, that's a very, very rare occurrence. I mean, I can only think of one journal article that really shows that little children under the age of 3 don't do well with masks. But with very, very, very rare exceptions, masks are something that people can tolerate and should be required to wear if they're going to be in a public venue like a courtroom. I think that our hope on the horizon is the vaccine development. And you may have heard today there was a major level 3 trial that was successful, so that they're going to be able to start more widely distributing this vaccine prototype. And there's every reason to hope that by December or January that we will get an approval of one of these. There's over 20 of them that are out there. And the difference this time around is that companies are making millions and millions of batches of these, anticipating that they're going to have a successful trial. That's a gamble. They could find out that there are adverse effects to their vaccine, or that their vaccine isn't as effective at giving you long-term antibody presence. But I like the gamble, because as soon as we get the word that one of these is going to work, we've worked here very extensively with the city manager's help to develop an emergency distribution system that's going to enable us to, I think, get this to the wider public. And, everybody's goal is to try to get at least 75% of the community immunized. That would give us what we call herd immunity and would make life, I think, a lot easier. Never going to be back quite to what we knew in February of this year. I think masks are here to stay. I think that we're going to have to get used to a little bit of this need for social distancing, physical distancing, hand sanitation. But I think we'll be in a much better place by spring of 2021, when Polar Park opens and we'll all put our feet up and have a beer. So I'm gonna quit there, because I know you have a big agenda, and I'll be happy to take questions later.
And to speak to district court matters, we have First Justice David Despotopoulos.
Good afternoon. Thank you for participating. Before I make my remarks, I'm going to ask you to view a short video on what to expect when you arrive at court. hope you enjoyed that video. As you saw, if you recognize it, you can bring your cell phones into the courthouse when you come. However, you're not able to take photographs within inside the courthouse, or when you're in the courtroom, your phone has to be turned off. As the video indicated, when you arrive at the front door, you're going to be asked a series of questions, and you have your temperature taken. So the purpose of my remarks is to inform you of what we are actually doing here. Although the courthouse doors are open, in the district court, we are only hearing in-person proceedings in a limited number of cases. And in essence, in order to come into the district court, you can come in for a criminal arraignment. That's either if you've been summoned into court, or if you've been arrested and released and told to report on a certain day. If you've been arrested and told to appear on a certain day, if you fail to appear on the day you were given, you will be defaulted. For those of you who are receiving summons arraignments, we will summons you again if you're unable to make it. And I would ask you to contact the clerk's office, and you'll see the number at the end of my remarks if you're unable to make court. So we're going to do criminal arraignments. If you're arrested and are in custody, you will be brought into the building, and we will do the arraignment by Zoom from the courthouse lockup. And any matters that are associated with an arraignment, such as a dangerousness hearing, a bail revocation, probation detention, and the posting of bail can be done here at the courthouse, and the return of bail can be done at the courthouse. We're also allowing people in to remove warrants. So if you know that you have a warrant, you can come to the courthouse, or you can go to your local police department. We are conducting probable cause hearings if there will be evidence taking. We are conducting mental health and substance abuse commitment hearings. So if your family member has a substance abuse problem, is a serious drug or alcohol user, and is a danger to him or herself, you can come down to the courthouse and seek a commitment. We're also conducting competency to stand trial and criminal responsibility hearings that arise out of the arraignments. In terms of the rest of the criminal matters, we are trying to do them virtually. If you are a defendant in a criminal case and you have a lawyer and your case is scheduled for a pretrial conference or a compliance and election date, your presence is waived. So I'm going to ask you to contact your lawyer and stay in close contact with your lawyer so that you can continue to know when your next scheduled date is. For those of people who are not represented, I'd ask you to contact the clerk's office and schedule a new date. In terms of bench trials, we will conduct bench trials for people that are in custody, as well as evidentiary motions, pleas, and probation violation hearing, where we conduct pleas virtually for people in custody and out of custody. In terms of the civil matters, we are conducting those in essence by virtually. We have twice a week now scheduled. You can schedule your motions with the clerk's office or your civil cases. In terms of restraining orders and harassment orders, we are conducting those hearings virtually by telephone or by video conference, Zoom, like the Zoom that we're doing here. If you are going to apply for a restraining order or a harassment order, at this point, you're able to enter the courthouse to fill out the paperwork. However, you will not have a hearing in the courtroom. Those are done virtually, as indicated, by telephone or by video conferencing. So in essence, that's what the district court is doing now. As I indicated, we want everybody to stay safe. So if we can handle your matters virtually, either by video or by phone, we prefer to do that. But as we continue to get out of this virus, hopefully by the time we get a vaccine, when we open up the doors, we'll get back to full business. So thank you. At this time, I'm going to introduce Judge Dan Wren, the Regional Administrative Justice of the Superior Court.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Daniel Wren. I'm a Superior Court judge. I sit primarily here in Worcester. The Superior Court is a county court. It's a circuit court of general jurisdiction. We have both criminal and civil jurisdiction. We function very much like the district court in terms of how we're functioning now. Each county has a sitting of the Superior Court, And depending on the size of the particular county, that will dictate how many courtrooms are dedicated to the Superior Court in that county. Here in Worcester, we're a fairly large county. We have 7 Superior Court courtrooms. 4 are designated as civil courtrooms and 3 are designated as criminal courtrooms. In the Superior Court, in order to have a criminal matter brought against you, you have to be indicted through a grand jury proceedings. Virtually all, we do have some pro se litigants on the criminal side, but the vast majority of the defendants are represented by counsel. On the civil side, our jurisdiction is cases that have a potential value $50,000 or more, so that the vast majority of our civil practice as well involves lawyers. Right now, as Judge Despotopoulos outlined for the district court, certainly our civil is being done primarily through virtual settings, either telephonically or through some audiovisual type platform such as Zoom, as we're participating in now. We're open for business. You can come into the courthouse, but you have to ask that your case be subject to an in-court hearing. The types of things that we're doing on the civil side are dispositive motions, such as a motion for summary judgment or a motion to dismiss. We certainly would allow lawyers to come in with their clients if they wish to participate in that type of hearing. And if you had a jury waived case, if you were going to come before a judge and present your case for a fact-based decision, then we would allow lawyers and obviously witnesses and also parties to come in for that. But again, you'd have to come in and request the court to do that. On the criminal side, we're primarily doing arraignments, evidentiary hearings such as motions to suppress, final violations of probation, pleas. If you're coming and pleading guilty to a particular offense, we do those in person. Otherwise, we're emphasizing, again, the virtual platform of Zoom, Polycom, and telephonic process to function in that capacity. Much like Judge Despotopoulos, we're very much looking forward to trying to get back to some sense of normal process, and that would involve getting back to a set trial list and a set jury trials and bench trials on an ongoing basis. But as we've heard, that probably is sometime down the road. I know here in Worcester County, we're very fortunate to have the leadership that we've had from City Manager Augustus, and we're so very fortunate to have Dr. Hirsch on board. They've both been a real pillars for us to rely on in getting good, valuable information as we're trying to navigate through this. And we do look for guidance from the science when we make the decisions that we have to make about who gets to come into the building and who doesn't. And again, I think to try and get through this collectively, I'm very proud to have had the support and cooperation from all of the 5 courts here in Worcester. You're really fortunate to have some very good judges in all of the courts. You're going to hear from all of them this afternoon, but we're very fortunate to have the leadership that we've had in those courts. With that, I will introduce to you the first justice of the Housing Court, Judge Diana Horan.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you to Judge Wren. As our Raj in Worcester, he has guided all of us through this from start to finish. And it's been an interesting journey, but we have great leadership, so I appreciate that. The Housing Court can hear cases involving residential property, landlord-tenant, eviction, post-foreclosure issues, neighbor disputes, and code enforcement, both health, building, and fire. We can also hear disputes involving commercial buildings where the health, safety, and welfare of the general public is at risk. And an example of that is when sprinklers in a large commercial building are not working, or as of late, we've seen situations where people have moved in to their businesses and are actually living there. So we have had some hearings involving that. We also hear small claims and general civil matters involving residential property and money owed. Finally, we can also issue restraining orders or preliminary injunctions to address disputes between the parties. For example, if a tenant wants repairs done to their apartment, or if a landlord needs access to make those repairs. While the courthouse was closed to the public in the beginning, we remained open for business this entire time. At first, business was limited to emergency only, like lockouts or lack of utilities, but now we are hearing more matters, including code enforcement, receiver cases, civil and small claim matters, and certain types of evictions, which I'll get to in a minute. We have been conducting the hearings telephonically or by Zoom, accepting filings by email or e-file, and thanks to the enormous efforts of Clerk Magistrate Nick Mudios and Assistant Clerk John Goggins, we can now conduct several hearings at one time. We can also conduct mediations by phone or by Zoom, and also by going to mass.gov/housing court, you can find a virtual clerk's office and a virtual housing specialist department where you can ask questions. This is our preferred method of business for the foreseeable future. Having said that now, the building being open to the public, we can conduct in-person hearings if necessary, but that will be the exception, not the rule for now. We will not be traveling to the satellite courts as we used to do. We will be conducting all business at the Worcester location. Please be mindful that if you do have an in-person hearing, don't bring anyone with you if they are not a witness. Don't bring a friend. Don't bring someone who just wants to watch. That adds to the number in the building, and it takes away from people who might have hearings. It also increases the risk for all of us. As the city manager mentioned, there's an eviction moratorium. I was asked not to use the word moratorium because for some you might not know what it means, so I'm going to tell you what it means. Essentially, it means that we cannot hear any eviction cases that involve non-essential reasons. And non-essential reasons have been defined as non-payment of rent, 30-day notices to quit without cause, and anything that doesn't involve health and safety jeopardy at the property, or a threat to health and safety at the property. If there is a threat to health and safety at the property, that is considered an essential eviction, and we can hear that case right now. The moratorium or ban is in effect currently until October 17th, 2020, which means that a landlord cannot bring an eviction case unless it is essential. A landlord cannot bring or start an eviction with a notice to quit unless it is essential. Once the moratorium is lifted, we will begin scheduling the cases that were put on hold when the state of emergency was declared and the moratorium was enacted. In other words, we have a group of cases of about 500 that we will schedule as soon as we are allowed to do so. Those will be heard first, and then cases following that will be scheduled as well. Again, we are going to aim to do it by Zoom or telephonically. Once jurors are allowed into the courthouse, we will designate jury trial days each week to process those cases as well. Lastly, I just want to say a couple things. Remember that the court is open and our staff is here to assist you, but we, like you, are trying to figure it out as we go. Many of us have lost family members or friends. Many of us have been affected by employment situations that were unexpected. We are all in the same storm. Please be patient with us. We are trying to figure it out. If you have any questions, feel free to call us. If you have a Zoom hearing, please act as if you are coming to the courthouse and you are having your hearing in the courtroom. Dress appropriately. Reduce distractions. Don't have cell phones near you or other people near you. Act as if you were in the courtroom. And please know that we are trying to help you. Thank you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the First Justice of the Juvenile Court, Carol Erskine.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to update all of you on the status of the juvenile court. During the court closure, which began in March, all judges and clerks and probation officers continued to work remotely so that we could hear emergency type positions. In our court during those months, we heard arraignments, dangerousness hearings, and mostly care and protection hearings, which are cases filed by the Department of Children and Families seeking emergency custody of children that the department believes are at risk of abuse or neglect. In March, April, and May, and in June, all judges conducted many hearings on those types of petitions, including mental health matters and matters that required immediate or expedited action. Since that time, and more recently, since the courts have opened, we continue to hear almost all matters remotely, except for those that are designated for hearings inside the court. That includes delinquency cases where a child is arrested during the day while the court is open. Those children are coming into court to be arraigned and to be assessed by a probation officer. If a child is arrested during the night, that child is taken to the overnight shelter placement on Belmont Street in Worcester at the Department of Youth Services. And we are conducting those arraignments at this time remotely so that we do not have to bring children and their families into court, so that those children can be released to the parent from the overnight shelter bed rather than coming into court. Our clerk's office has been working every day to reschedule all matters that were scheduled in March, April, May, and June. We've had a number of folks contacting the court to find out about cases being rescheduled, but we are contacting through the mail anyone that had a case so that they will know when it is being rescheduled. Aside from delinquencies and care and protection cases, we also, of course, hear child requiring assistance cases. Those include truancy and school offender cases, stubborn child petitions, runaways, and sexually exploited children. During court closure, we continued to hear remotely runaway cases because of the emergent nature of them, sexually exploited cases, again, because of the emergent nature of those cases. But of course, we were not hearing school cases as the schools were closed. I have since been in contact through letters to every superintendent in Worcester County. Those letters have been forwarded to all principals, and we have notified all school superintendents and principals that we are dismissing all truancy in school offender cases, is that we are unable to evaluate the evidence on those cases based on the fact that there are many different plans for reopening. We have offered them the ability to keep cases open if they choose, but at this time, we have not heard from any school department that is asking us to keep a truancy or school offender case open. As far as stubborn child petitions go, during the emergency phase of the crisis, which was in March, April, May, and part of June, we only heard stubborn child petitions if there was an emergency situation that might require DCF custody. However, in non-emergency situations, we were not hearing those cases at that time because services were unavailable through the department and the family resource centers were closed. However, anyone wishing to file a stubborn child petition may come into the court, file a petition in the clerk's office, and it will be accepted. and a date will be assigned, as well as attorneys will be assigned. In our court, attorneys are assigned to every child, whether it's a delinquency case or a child requiring assistance. All of these children are deemed to be indigent, and therefore they are all given the ability to have a lawyer. Right now, we're hearing almost every case type there is, and we are scheduling trials on parental rights cases in 6 weeks. So all cases that were scheduled for trial, lengthy parental termination trials, are being rescheduled. All are being notified via lawyers, through their lawyers or through the clerk's office. Those cases that were scheduled for trial during the closure have been rescheduled and will be beginning, as I said, in 6 weeks. All other matters are being heard remotely unless we need in-person hearings, and those will only be for certain care and protection cases and certain dangerousness hearings and arraignments. Anyone who needs information about the juvenile court can log on to the mass.gov's website and look at the section called Court Contact Info and Overview of COVID. Click on the link to the juvenile court and you will find forms and all the information you need to file a case in our court. Thank you. I want to introduce my colleague, the First Justice of the Probate and Family Court, Judge Lila Keamy.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Judge Erskine. It's really a privilege to be here today and to have the continued support of all of my colleagues who are participating in this virtual town hall meeting. With me from the Probate and Family Court is our field coordinator, Keith Nalbandian, and he's a great resource to particularly all of the judges with the huge changes in technology that we have all been trying to assimilate to. So it's been quite a learning experience for all of us, and it will continue to be as we learn new ways for how we process the very important work that all of our departments do across the Commonwealth. So, and thank you, Keith. I know he is going to help me if there are certain very technical questions that I may not have the answers to. But we have developed our protocol, which has been updated regularly on the trial court website. It has a wealth of information as to individuals for any particular issue that may come into our court, the best person to contact. We have really exceptional staff in the Probate and Family Court. We're very fortunate, very knowledgeable staff. Our JCM, Kathy Brown, all of our AJCM staff, our sessions clerks, and our judicial secretaries. All of their specific contact information is available on the protocol and is a great guide for people in terms of if you have a question, whom do you contact? So we also, in that protocol, have direction for what to do in the event that we are forced to close, because even during our previous closures, we've been able to continue hearings remotely. Particularly those emergency matters. We have quite a breadth of cases that come into the Probate and Family Court, as I'm sure many of you know: divorce, custody, adoption, separate support, paternity, child support enforcement, guardianships of incapacitated persons and conservatorships, guardianships of minors. We handle many cases involving the Department of Children and Families. We also handle domestic restraining orders. So there's quite a bit of work that we do, and much of what we've been able to do has been, up until recently, on an emergency basis. So we are now figuring out ways as to how we can address the growing backlog of cases that we've had, both within, for example, the Department of Revenue, and trying to set up different block sessions for the Department of Revenue session, cases that involve the Department of Children and Families, cases that involve the Worcester Recovery Hospital, where previously we had a designated session on a regular basis, as well as develop a guardianship block so that we can make it a little bit easier, particularly for attorneys who are representing many of the facilities, to have their matters heard in really a more organized way. So we are doing our best to move these cases forward. We are scheduling our cases continually telephonically and through Zoom. We have recently begun the scheduling of a limited number of in-person hearings. They involve particularly trials that may have been in progress at the time that the closure began in March and that do need to be completed. They may involve contested 209A hearings. We are scheduling those matters on a very restricted basis. And we are also addressing emergency matters that now are coming to the court since our opening on July 13th. So we are designating 2 out of our 6 courtrooms to handle those emergency matters and matters that require an in-person hearing. But the majority of our work going forward will continue to be remote because, of course, we are trying to maintain as safe an environment as possible while also doing the important work that we need to continue doing. So the courtrooms, if you do participate in an in-person hearing in the courtrooms, you will see quite a different look and a different procedure. We all do need to abide by those very important procedures. We're doing it for the safety of everyone, including our staff, and for everyone who's coming into the building. So there is quite a bit of signage throughout our building, directing everyone a different way as to how you travel within the building, where you can go, and how you contact people. So I appreciate the support that everyone has offered with regard to educating the public, particularly for the number of changes that we have all seen. We have made some major changes with our Registry of Probate. So our registrar, Stephanie Fatman, has, with the support of the trial court, developed a virtual registry. It's quite unique, and there are other counties within the Commonwealth who have also taken on a virtual registry. This allows people to contact specific individuals within the registry staff with very specific questions that would alleviate having to come to the court in person. Filings are done electronically. You can set up appointments to talk with someone in the registry remotely, and it has alleviated quite a significant amount of in-person filings and in-person discussions. I think Keith had provided me with an estimate that most recently, I think on a day last week, we had approximately 50 or 60 people who engaged in the virtual registry. We're going to continue to expand those efforts, and I think that that will go quite a long way in reducing the number of people who need to be present in the registry or who need to be coming to our court. Our probation officers are continuing to hear cases remotely. Our chief probation officer, Lisa Wong, has worked to establish some very creative measures to keep certain programs going, including the drug and alcohol testing program, including the Seek Work program. We do have limited capacity to conduct remote dispute interventions and remote investigations. So those will probably continue to be restricted going forward in light of the current circumstances, but we are doing our best to at least engage many of the pro se cases where people are representing themselves. Our probation officers are wonderful at trying to work out many emergency issues that bring some resolution, even if on a temporary basis, to many of the people who need the help of our court. We have also, with great appreciation, have had the support of the Worcester County Bar Association. particularly for the Probate and Family Court, they have expanded their conciliation program to help us hear even cases where there are not attorneys involved that might resolve a motion hearing that would like to have the help of our conciliators in the Worcester Bar Association. So that is a great resource to us and has been very helpful in resolving many of the issues. You can imagine that cases particularly that involve young children and parents and parties and guardians who are in dispute over many of the issues that COVID-19 has had on the exchange of children, the exercise of parenting time. It's quite complicated, and as the situation has evolved, it continues to change. So we are doing our best to try to address those matters quite properly, and particularly many of the cases that come in from our area hospitals involving guardianships of incapacitated persons. So we're doing our best. We do have the support of our court service center. I know that they are a significant source of support to the Probate and Family Court, and it's much appreciated. I see Attorney Bluen, who's here, and will be speaking with regard to the work of his department as well. So again, I just want to thank everyone for all of the support. At this time, I'd like to introduce the District Court Chief Probation Officer, Maureen Chamberlain.
Thank you, Judge. Hi, I am Maureen Chamberlain. I'm the Chief Probation Officer of the Worcester District Court. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what probation is doing in light of the health crisis that we're in. The probation department continues to supervise people in the community. Some of our supervision practices have been altered to comply with the COVID health guidelines, but we are actively supervising probationers in the city of Worcester and other communities. We are installing global positioning systems known as GPS. We're also installing and monitoring remote alcohol testing, which is referred to as SCRAM. All of our probation staff are working either in the office or remotely. Probation officers have been given work cell phones in the past 6 weeks so that they can be reached whether they're in their office or working remotely. I would ask probationers looking to be in touch with their probation officer to call their office phones. And if the probation officer is not present, they will have left on their voice message their number for their cell phone, and they can be reached during the week between the hours of 8 and 4:30. Email is another effective way to communicate with your probation officer. As you know, as I'm sure you know, our role in probation is to enforce court orders and to help probationers comply with conditions of probation and successfully complete probation. We know that in the past 4 months that they've been particularly difficult months, and we understand that on top of the usual day-to-day work responsibilities and home responsibilities, that many people have had additional hardships related to health, employment, childcare, isolation, addiction, and issues related to racial justice and equality. Many of these issues can make it more difficult to comply with conditions of probation, but I am confident that we can work around these obstacles if you can communicate with your probation officer. Communication is the key. Please reach out to your probation officer and be in contact. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking for success. We want people to be successful on probation. We're using many of our community partners to make referrals to for a variety of services, including anger management programming, medically assisted treatment, drug testing, sober housing and residential treatment, substance use evaluations and treatment, mental health evaluations and treatment, intimate partner abuse education programs, driver education programs, community service, employment placement, and substance abuse education, job readiness, and life skills programming through our Office of Community Correction here on Main Street in Worcester. We can also provide information for self-help groups and provide information about virtual NA and AA chat rooms. Violations of probation for the past 4 months have not issued from this department based solely on the reason for failure to pay fines or fees to the court. I think it's an acknowledgement that some people are facing financial hardship. As I finish up, I'd just like to congratulate all those who are making adjustments and complying with your conditions of probation during this difficult time. And I want to encourage those who have gotten off track to be in touch with your probation officer so that you can get back on track. Again, communication is key. For anyone who has an active probation warrant, please report to the courthouse. The court is open and will be able to address that warrant. Thank you for your time. And I would like to introduce Matthew Blewin, our Court Service Center Manager.
Thank you. As Chief Probation Officer Chamberlain stated, my name is Matthew Blewin. I'm the manager of the Court Service Center at the location here in Worcester. The Court Service Centers are a fairly new part of the court system. We are part of the trial court system, but we operate independently of any of the 5 court departments. Our goal at the Court Service Center is to provide access to justice. So what that means is that we help litigants with general legal information and help completing court forms. And when we talk about litigants, we mean anyone that has an issue that needs to be resolved through the courts or by the court. Now, it's important to know that if you have an attorney in a case, you should reach out to your attorney to contact the court about whatever emergency matter you're dealing with, because we cannot assist litigants that are represented by counsel. We don't want to interfere in any way with your relationship with your attorney and their plans for your case. So at our center, including myself, we have 3 attorneys, myself and 2 staff attorneys. And we also have, every semester, we have trained interns that can help to provide assistance to litigants. We have 8 college students and 1 law student that are helping us virtually this summer. So it's been a great experience. It's allowed us to make more contact and provide more assistance than just the 3 of us would be able to typically. So the difficult thing right now is that traditionally, the way that people would find us and get our assistance would be by walking into the center. Our policy has always been walk-ins only. We can't make appointments and we can't communicate via phone. So it's been, there's a lot of good work that's gone in by both the staff of the court service centers around the state and the Office of Court Management to make sure we've got a platform to continue to provide the assistance. And we here in Worcester have continuously provided assistance to litigants. I actually started here March 30th. And so there wasn't any kind of gap in providing services, first through telephone and now through Zoom, which launched 2 weeks ago. So that's been a great improvement in the one-on-one contact we can provide. So during COVID-19, we're able to help with emergency matters presently. Those things can include things like restraining orders or abuse prevention orders, harassment orders, situations that people might be dealing with a family member that has either drug abuse issues or mental health issue and is a danger to themselves or others. For those types of matters, we can either provide assistance with court forms or we can point you in the right direction to allow you to access the court system and get help for that family member. We can also assist with situations where there's an emergency issue with the landlord, like a lockout of an apartment, cutting off of utilities, harassing behavior, those types of things. And as Judge Keamy said, really the majority of what we've seen during this crisis has been assistance in the probate and family court with situations involving potential or alleged harm that could come to a child if there isn't a change in custody, or in some situations, the appointment of a guardian, a third party to look after a minor child who's in need, and also appointment of guardians for incapacitated people who might be in the hospital, who might be elderly or were involved in a bad accident, things of that nature. So a majority of the assistance that we have provided, just based on the contacts we've received from the community, have been in the probate and family court in those types of situations. But we are here to help with those other types of emergency matters. And so if you feel that you have an emergency matter, we can assist you with court forms. And then it'll be up to the court to determine whether or not to schedule something like a telephonic hearing or to set you down for a hearing down the road when more in-person hearings are taking place. But the first step of that, if you are not represented by an attorney, would be to contact us and kind of see where you can go from there. So currently we're operating remotely, primarily by Zoom meeting. And we also work with the Office of Court Interpreter Services to provide interpretation in the languages that are needed across our county, such as Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, Vietnamese, other languages. And our next speaker will touch on that in more detail. The best way to get in touch with us at the Court Service Center is by joining our daily Zoom meeting. We have a Zoom meeting open from 9 to 12. And as needed, we also can schedule people to come on to speak in the afternoon as well. So those links will be provided in this presentation. That's like I said, that's the best way to get in contact with us, because we feel that that's the closest equivalent to coming in and meeting with us in person. Because while we are in here part of the time in the physical office, we cannot see people physically in the office. So Zoom is the best option. If you don't have access to Zoom, you can call or email the local courthouse. For a few months, we've made sure that various people within the court system have our contact information. And then also, because of the courthouse being open to the public, we also, in various spots across throughout the courthouse, especially near our office, we have our contact information. We've provided it to security to give to people who are looking to get in contact with us. So we're hoping that anyone who needs our information can get it and can get in contact with us. And we would also like to thank the public for their patience as we go through this, not only in coming up with this new system, but in you know, just putting up with and dealing with the delays that are inherent in this type of system, because when you're communicating virtually, there's always technical issues, and it's just nothing goes as smoothly as if we were sitting together in a room. So we want to thank the public for their patience as we work out this system, and we hope that it gets even more efficient as we go forward. For non-emergency matters, litigants can still contact their local courthouse or call the courthouse helpline. That number will be provided, and that helpline is available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So as I said before, to give a little bit more detail about the available options for interpreter and language services, I'm now going to introduce Senior Manager for the Office of Court Interpreter Services, Narda Barrios.
Good afternoon. The Office of Court Interpreter Services was established with the premise that all persons within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, regardless of their literacy and proficiency in English, have the right for equal access to courts and for the services and program and resources available. Our office has been providing language access and interpreter services in over 120 languages. The most requested languages, which are Spanish, Portuguese, Cape Verdean, Haitian Creole, Arabic, Chinese, Khmer, Russian, Vietnamese, and American Sign Language. During the COVID-19, with the court closures, and now with the courts reopening as of July 13, our office has endeavored to provide interpretation and translation services for communities statewide. Interpreters are available to individuals with limited English proficiency by phone, conference phone line, video conferencing, with Polycom, WebEx, Zoom, and in-person interpreting when the court requests it. We have been and will continue to be available for attorney-client interviews, court clinics, and court hearings such as arraignments, probation violations, warrant removal, dangerousness hearing, and mental health evaluations. The Office of Court Interpreter Services is also providing interpreters to help on the helpline in Portuguese and Spanish. The helpline is staffed from 8:30 to 4:30 from Mondays to Fridays. There's also information that's available in mass courts. We will continue to provide language access as each community needs it. And you feel free to go and see a mass court, the services and the additional services that we can provide. I would like to thank the interpreters interpreting for this forum. For Spanish, Antonio Rodriguez. For Portuguese, Steve Sanford. For Arabic, Farid Michael. And for Nepali, Bindiya Jha. Thank you. And I would like to introduce to you Elizabeth Cerda, who is the Senior Manager for Access to Justice.
I just want to take a couple of minutes to thank everyone for joining us in this town hall today, both our presenters as well as our viewers. I want to thank our partners in the City of Worcester, City Manager Augustus, as well as Dr. Hirsch for joining us in this town hall today. I want to thank Chief Justice Carey and all of our judges, probation, interpreters, and court service center managers for participating and for providing the community of Worcester with this important information. Like Chief Justice Carey mentioned in her remarks, as well as Narda, this town hall is being broadcast in 5 different languages: English, Spanish, Portuguese, Nepali, and Arabic. And I want to thank our court interpreters for providing language access for this town hall to so many in the community of Worcester that wouldn't otherwise have access. So lastly, I just want to let you know that all of the contact information for all of the court departments, the court service centers, and the interpreter's office, and for all of the agencies and community groups that you have heard named throughout the program are available at the trial court website at the address you see in your screen today. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call the trial court helpline at 833-91-COURT. So thank you very much.